Okay, In Defense of Ska will begin in just a moment. But first, I just want to say thank you for listening to the podcast. It means so much to us. And if you enjoy the podcast, tell your friends about it. The best way to do that is to, follow us on Instagram and Twitter and share our posts and let people know when they say, hey, is there a podcast I should be listening to? Say yes, In Defense of Ska. Go on to wherever you get podcasts from and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a 5-star review. Let people know that you support In Defense of Ska, that you defend ska. Thanks.
Ska has come up in Fred Armisen's comedy a handful of times. There was the infamous Bart Ska-mpson bootleg shirt skit on Portlandia. He's done some ska humor on SNL, and it seems like every time he's on The Tonight Show, he's playing upstrokes on the guitar. As it turns out, Fred is a big fan of ska, so he sat down with us for this podcast. He tells us about the various bands he likes. He tells us stories from his time playing drums in 90s punk band Trenchmouth, and he reveals the inspiration behind the Bart Ska-mpson shirt skit.
This has been kind of a white whale guest for us for a long time.
Yeah, I actually remember, I don't even know how long ago it was, but it was a while ago. You're like, Aaron, I want to get Fred Armisen on the show.
Yeah.
And I was like, me too, but I don't even know if we can.
Sure. The reason I wanted to get him on was I saw him perform stand-up kind of right after things opened up the first time during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right before things were going to kind of shut down again for a while. And he told a bunch of ska jokes in his set. And so I was like, we got to get him on.
And they weren't just like corny ska jokes, right? They were like, he clearly had knowledge and awareness of ska.
Yeah, the setup, it wasn't the usual setup where it's like ska's the punching bag. It was basically being like, oh yeah, and then in ska they do this.
Yeah.
So it was very much about the music, not at the expense of the music.
That's what happens. If you tell a good ska joke, you're going to be on this show. You got that? All you scamedians out there?
All right, scamedians.
God, you should kill me for saying that joke.
No, that was great.
One of the times you were on The Tonight Show, and you were doing, you had an acoustic guitar, and you were talking about guitar styles in different countries.
Yeah.
For Latin America, you said ska. You talked about how popular ska is in Latin America, which is very true. What I'm curious about is I'm curious about your experience in Latin America and experiencing ska.
So over the years, I'd say like in the past, I don't know, 4 years or maybe more now, I've been going to Santiago, Chile, to shoot this show, Los Espookys. But when I've been down there, it's been for like a considerable chunk of time. Before that, when I was a kid, I lived in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro for a couple years. I was in like 2nd and 3rd grade. And then my mom is from Venezuela. So I've spent a lot of like, early childhood in Venezuela, just visiting family and stuff. But Chile is more recent. And I went over to Argentina a little bit, but mostly I was in Chile. And it's more of like a general feeling. Like, when you travel and you go someplace and you just get a sense of like what your taxi driver is playing on the radio, which is just what's around, like, what's at a restaurant, what's just around. And I feel like ska really, that's something I just heard a lot there. It just would come up, and it wouldn't be any band in particular. It's just like a sound, like, oh, I guess, this is what's popular here.
Yeah, that happened to me in Mexico as well, because ska's really big in Mexico. But yeah, it was like cars driving past me. I would hear, like, for like a second, I'd hear ska.
Yeah.
And then I'd see people with ska shirts, and not like necessarily the big bands, just bands that you would know if you were aware of ska.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it seems to be, I interpret that as like just being international. you know, but I mean, I don't know what goes on everywhere else in the world, but I do think that like that's like a general sense that I got when I was in South America. That it was like almost like it more than hardcore, more than other genres of punk, ska seemed to sort of, because I could see it being friendly too. It's like a friendly kind of music that's kind of inviting. So I understand how it would work well on the radio.
Yeah. I mean, those countries have all had pretty big acts in their own country, I think, that have really helped carry that music forward.
Yeah.
So, and I think, you know, the mix of like horns, it's danceable, but it's kind of punk. Like, I think it mixes well.
And I think something about that guitar, that sort of, you know, eighth note guitar thing, kind of, that's kind of inviting because it's kind of repetitive. You know, it's like a little party. It's like a little celebration. So something about that also is kind of, as opposed to like a long guitar solo or like a sad acoustic part. Something about electric, you know, that steady, you know, those chords going over and over kind of, you know, draws you in.
It seems like, and I'm not like an expert in Latin America, but it seems like ska,
you are. I think you are. We all are.
Metal and ska seem like they do really well in Latin America.
Yeah, or I would say goth too, like goth music. Or that might be. I wonder if that's more in Mexico, but like some goth and then some like, you know, I feel like everyone brings this up, but like the Smiths are really popular in Mexico. But yeah, these extremes. You know, as a matter of fact, speaking of metal, I did go to a metal festival in Chile. But the first time I went, I just happened to find out about this. By festival, I mean it was just playing at this one club, but there was like a bunch of like, but I mean like death metal bands. And yeah, to your point, it was really big.
And so I think that was the second time you did a ska thing on Tonight Show. Was the first one when you had the electric guitar and you were going through the history of punk?
Yeah.
Were you kind of making up the lyrics?
Yeah.
Your mom and dad were the best.
Well, just because when I picture like American ska, I picture it as blunt, like the lyrics being really, you know, just like set out for you and just really clear. They're very clear lyrics.
Yeah.
And there's an optimism to them, in my opinion. Like in my view of American ska, it's like there's an optimism to it. So that, I don't know. It was like words that rhymed, and I thought, oh, that seems. It seems, yeah, like the pronunciation of it seemed very mom and dad. You know, like it seemed very like American.
It sounded like a Less Than Jake song to me.
Sure. Could be anybody.
Yeah.
I haven't got to see your comedy for bass players show yet. I think you just started doing that.
Yeah, I did. Well, I did it in San Francisco for this comedy festival. I just love playing in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall. And, you know, I had already done Stand Up for Drummers there. I taped a special there, and then I did a guitar player thing in, I think, 2019. Or was it 2020? And then this just seemed like the next step, like in the next obvious thing. It was like 3 nights in a row, and I had guest bass players, and the first one was Les Claypool, then Kathy Valentine the second, and then Mike Dirnt on the last one. And it was all great. It was really fun. You know, the bass is just such a strange and powerful instrument.
Yeah.
Not that like I need to explain instruments to you, but meaning, you know, it's like the bass is such a mystery to me.
Why is that?
Because it's so underappreciated in a way, and that like your ears are just sort of going to everything else. But as soon as it drops out, it's like everything is dead.
Yeah. But in ska though, it really is kind of like driving the melody a lot of the times.
Oh yeah.
Because you've got that guitar doing the eighth note thing.
Yeah. And ska bass players really do, they are always solid. Like that's like an area you can't really, you really can't drop the ball with ska and obviously with reggae too.
Yeah, anytime we learn of a non-ska band and some member of that band is into ska and reggae, 9 times out of 10 it's the bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they probably grew up listening to like reggae and ska, and it was like a fundamental part of their building their bass lines and understanding the bass instrument.
Yeah.
It seems like it's there's such a big connection between bass and reggae and ska.
Kind of like because I can't tell if it's the drummer, because that's also like defines it a lot.
Yeah,
But there are other genres of music where, like, if you're, if the bass player isn't great, or if the bass player isn't really, laying everything down, it's okay. But I just feel like, yeah, we're just making the same point. But I'm just saying that, like, it's like you really can't. It's just not the same if that bass player isn't, he's got like the blueprint to the whole song.
Did you ever or can you play like a solid traditional ska reggae drum part? Do you know the nuances of that?
So first answer is yes. I feel like when I was in Trenchmouth, we had like some uh influence of like dub and ska, and
Yeah, for sure.
and I'm really into timbales. So yes on timbales, and then I would always tune my snare really high and sort of, I would do like not rim shots like, the clicking one, but like where you hit the stick
Yeah.
on the head and like the rim at the same time, so it's almost like metallic sounding. So so I would say yes, but when it comes to reggae, I think that a true reggae drummer is a very real thing that I have only played a little bit of. So I don't hold that badge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so where like a guitar player, there's so many guitar players who know the blues and who could play the blues, but it's a smaller number that's like, okay, but do you really, really know it? And, are you fluent? So ska, I would say yes. And then reggae, I'm like, I would need a couple years of really learning it. I mean to say also that, like, we all have an image of what a reggae drummer really sounds like, but when you really, watch a real reggae drummer, it's not what you had in your head.
Yeah.
With all the offbeats and the little, fills and stuff. There's something way more steady that I think you've really got to be having. I think you really have had to have played reggae for a long time to really get it.
Yeah, because even if you can like literally play it, it might not sound natural because
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
because I like a lot of the Jamaican reggae or even like the old ska, like Lloyd Knibb from Scotalites.
Uh-huh.
It's like a natural. It's kind of like the bass drum is doing like opposite of what you would do as a
Yeah.
rock musician, but it's not in a stilted way. Where if I'm, I mean, I played drums and I grew up playing ska punk, but so it's not like what we're talking about. It's what you were talking about. And to play like real traditional ska, real traditional reggae I would sound like mechanical.
Yeah. Or like imitation.
Yeah.
There was one drummer, I'll never remember what band it was, but there was like a pretty heavy reggae scene in Chicago when I lived there. And I saw some band, they were from out of town, but the drummer had an electronic kit. I don't know what brand it was, but I remember thinking, oh, that's really how you play it. Where it wasn't important to him to have like timbales everywhere and like little splash cymbals, but he had this really steady feel that was like, that really, even on an electronic kit, that was to me, that really was like the definition of what reggae is supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
Where it didn't matter what he was playing. Because I'm just guessing that he had an electronic kit for travel. because it was just probably easier to cart around.
Yeah, it breaks down so much smaller.
Yeah, but that sort of like opened my mind to like, oh, it's not about having like a reggae kit.
Where does ska begin for you? I'm going to assume that it came from two-tone first.
Yes. And I grew up on Long Island in New York. Maybe 30 or 40 minutes outside of New York City. And when I think back to like when I truly heard ska and the Specials, it wasn't through some cool record store or anything like that. It was on a regular rock FM station. It wasn't even on a station that was veering into like turning into a new wave station.
Mm-hmm.
They just would play whatever, Boston or the Eagles. But somewhere in there, they would play A Message to You, Rudy, and Gangsters. And then, I don't know, Joe Jackson. It was this weird, like, which thank God it happened. But for me, it was a real accepting of, they didn't even announce it. Like, here's a, strange new kind of music. They would just play it. And then the Specials were on Saturday Night Live. And, it was like, they were to this day, I think of it as like the best musical performance of anything on any TV show. Definitely the best I've ever seen on SNL. But I couldn't believe my eyes. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, when Neville Staples comes down the stairs holding the Tommy gun.
Oh,
coolest
that
thing
is
ever.
so cool, and they looked great.
Yeah.
And I was in 6th grade, and so that around then is like my first exposure to it was two-tone stuff. And then as my friends were getting records and stuff, then like they would know more about like the English Beat and the Selector and Madness. Madness was really big too. Like I remember early on like seeing videos, like Madness videos, and being like, what is, that's what England looks like.
Yeah.
That was like the muted colors and stuff. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing was so romantic to me. Like it was so listener friendly, and oh man, I was really hooked hearing like this, especially the Specials. But Madness, all of that was like really, really worked for me.
I always thought the Madness, how well they did here was always interesting because of all those bands, they're the ones that were the most like British, like you were saying, the visuals and the video, the lyrics, very, very British accent in the songs.
Yeah.
A lot of their influences like Ian Dury and stuff, like that stuff is just so British. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense to American kids, but maybe some of that, the fact that it just is British is part of the appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's something like Monty Python, the way that's so British, but something about it just worked in America anyway.
Yeah.
Or, or that's the reason it worked. So, yeah, because Madness were like for real huge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's funny thinking about like punk as something that, struggled to get on the airwaves or whatever, however you want to call it. But when they were like truly, on the radio and on MTV and stuff.
Did you have a moment where you understood that this was a separate genre, or did it all just kind of seem like these are all just pieces of punk rock?
To me, it was like, I took it as pieces of punk rock.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, even if they didn't intend it that way, that's too bad on them. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but you're all going in my record collection. So you're going to be in there with every other one of these punk bands. And to me, it's going to be the same genre. And I mean, it could be the haircuts, I guess, that kind of like short hair meant a lot to me. And now that I'm thinking back, because I did not pre-think these answers, I should add that like, as we all got into the Clash, I mean, they had a bunch of ska songs. Mm-hmm. So there was that. And then we forget, or I forget, that the Police were a ska band, you know? I know
Yeah.
that they were huge and stuff, but like those are full on ska songs, you know, and I remember like Sting would wear like a, you know, an English beat shirt.
And they brought the Specials, or the Specials opened up for them in the US for some of the touring that they did here.
Oh wow. Yeah, I guess they really, you know, that was it was really tied into that. So I guess with the Clash and the Police and also, I mean, obviously like every other new wave band had like at least a couple ska songs, which is weird because I was going to ask what you guys thought of that. Because I'm not talking about bands like the Police, but I mean like there are bands like XTC that even though, you know, you don't think of them as a ska band, what do we think of the fact that, you know, there'd be like, I don't know, 2 ska songs on one of their albums or something.
Yeah, like I think Down in the Cockpit is one.
Yeah.
I love XT. I think XTC are one of the greatest bands. And I like that their ska songs were very much XTC songs,
Yeah.
and so they were very unusual and unique, and didn't sound like the ska songs that the two tone bands were playing.
Right.
I'm sure because of the timing, and they're all like, you know, late 70s, early 80s. I'm sure it was all like this. Everybody was listening to everybody and sort of influencing each other. I'm sure that was probably what was going on. They probably weren't like, we're going to be two tone, but they're probably like, oh, let's throw little specials in here or something.
Yeah.
And I think it was cool. Yeah.
And it really fit with them.
Hmm.
What am I thinking of? I'm thinking when you're near me, I have difficulty breathing. That's totally a ska song, and I would say
Hmm.
even though it's like it's like a slower feel or a different feel. I think Making Plans for Nigel is kind of there's like some ska elements to
It's
it.
got a little bounce to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you familiar? Were you a fan of the band The Members?
yeah. I mean, I don't think I had any members' albums, but I remember seeing a members' video. I remember I knew some of the members' songs.
They had some reggae elements too, and they had a song or two with the Specials horn section on it too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of that. See,
Yeah.
now I want to go back and listen to some members.
I just, you know, and then in that time period in the UK, I mean, everybody there was into ska and reggae. And it was so like intertwined with punk rock. I just think that's all those bands. They were listening to like old reggae. They were listening to like the ska revival. They were just listening to all of it. So
Yeah.
much more than that was happening here. And I think that's probably why it was happening. Where it would, yeah, like you're saying, or Elvis Costello. I mean, he produced the
Yeah,
Specials
yeah.
record, but he also had a few ska songs.
Right.
Joe Jackson, like you said, had a few ska songs.
Yeah.
Joe Jackson produced early Toasters. I don't know if you knew that.
I had no idea. I didn't know I didn't know he produced anything. I think he produced Suzanne Vega, maybe?
Oh, you know what it was? He was under contract, and he wasn't allowed to produce the Toasters, so he
Oh
used a
God.
fake name.
Can you believe those contracts? What
It's
were they
ridiculous.
thinking? I want to go back in time and go, why wouldn't you want your artist on someone else's album? It's
I know.
advertisement for like
Yeah.
your guy. What is that? It's such a strange, you know, all those like 60s bands who like couldn't, you know, be in the credits and stuff is so strange. But yeah, anyway, thinking back to those bands, Police and all that, and then like and then of course it just all, you know, got bigger and bigger. But yeah, definitely two tone. When my friends and I would go record shopping, it was really fun to get those 7 inches, you know, like because of the design. I mean, I'm so into that design that I still love it. I still want it on my wall.
Hmm.
You know, the either the two tone logo or the specials, all that stuff. It all. I just like the aesthetics of it.
Yeah. There was I read an article where you were saying songs, some of your favorite songs, and in this particular one, you mentioned Fun Boy 3.
Yeah,
It ain't what you do.
yeah, yeah.
I thought that was an interesting selection, and I do definitely think Fun Boy 3 in the U.S. doesn't really get a lot of attention, but they were a really interesting band. and one of the cool offshoots of the specials.
Yeah, they were so great, and I kind of liked it as an like evolution from the specials. Like I like it. It's almost like I if ska didn't. Well, I don't even know what the rules of ska are, but to me, Funboy 3, is an extension of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even if it doesn't sound like ska, it's almost like, as the Beatles got more psychedelic, it's still the Beatles. So that's how I thought of Funboy 3. That there's still, it's an extension of it. Just in the same way that, I guess this is a little different, but I liked where uh, Fine Young Cannibals went,
Mm-hmm.
just from, even if it's not necessarily ska, I like it, this, how it's like related.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can see it makes sense.
Yeah. General Public too. Like, oh, I
Mhm.
got to see General Public.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm giving myself a pat on the back. I'm like, oh, Fred, I'm so glad you did that. Because now I'm so glad that that's not a show that I was like, oh, I wish I had gone.
Yeah.
Because living in New York, you just take it for granted, and I missed so many bands just out of, the Jam I didn't see, and I knew they were playing. I thought, oh, I'll see them eventually. But General Public played at Radio City Music Hall, which is gigantic. But they had by this time there was already like a new wave station in New York. It was WLIR and then WDRE. So they, bands like that were getting like a lot of play, and yeah, they played it on Radio City Music Hall. It was great.
I assume you were too young to catch the two-tone ska bands when they came through.
Yeah, too young. Or although I mean, I should have known better. I should have made it more of an effort to see them open for the Go-Go's, because I think they played with the Go-Go's on some shows.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the Funboy 3's version of Our Lips Are Sealed?
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
Oh, it's so good, and it's also because that Terry's a writer of it too, so it's like very legit to me. It's like kind of a cover, but also kind of an original.
Yeah, because they co-wrote it, and it's about their
Yeah.
little romance that they had.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so
I mean, the
good.
Go-Go's version's great, but I love that there's like a sadness in the Funboy 3's version. It's like the Go-Go's is like the fun version, and then Funboy 3's is like the sad version.
Yeah. I mean, Terry Hall, his, sad kind of version of, being a singer, it really works for me. And I'm not usually into like sadness as a musical emotion, but like something about the way he does it. I don't know. It reminds me so much of England, and I was really, how everyone gets sad about people who die, in everyone's favorite bands. I really was bummed out about that in a very surprising way.
Yeah, I think that one was tough. I think in part because he kept his health issues a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just out of nowhere to all of us. And but Horace, like he later talked about everything that was going on after Terry had passed, and it sounded like it was a tough couple of years for Terry before he
Yeah.
ended up passing. It was really, really sad
Oh,
hearing the whole story.
that's too bad.
And the specials were they were going to make a new record. It was going to be like a reggae record, and what's his name? Roger Rivas from the Agrolites was going to produce it.
Oh man.
But yeah, then they just couldn't do it because of Terry's health.
Oof.
Oh, what a drag. Did they record anything before
I don't think so. I think what I read is that they had got together and rehearsed and wrote, and then they had to take a break. And they were assuming that when Terry's feeling better, we'll get back to this project. And then he didn't.
Oh man. Yeah, when he died, like that realization that someone was like a bigger part of your life than you realized. I think that's what it was like. Like even going back to like hearing them on FM rock radio, that kind of thing. Like,
Hmm.
being in sixth grade. That's a long time for someone to been, going from like my turntable to cassettes to like CDs and to my, various versions of iPods and stuff. Like, I was talking to Damon from Trenchmouth about it, and he was like, I've never not listened to the specials. They're always in rotation. Or if I have to DJ something, you just end up putting on Ghost Town or something. It just ends up on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm a little younger, so I got into ska and punk and all that stuff in the early '90s, and so I didn't get specials came later through discovery, but second I discovered it, I fell in love with it, and it was older music, but because the cover looked even older than it actually was, it seemed like really old music to me.
Yeah.
I was on tour in a ska band before I even heard the specials.
What band were you in?
I played in a band called Link 80.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And how did it go? How was your experience?
I mean, it was punk rock band touring, sleeping on kids' floors and spinning the van out on black ice and getting in fights.
Those fights are the dumbest fights ever.
Yeah, they really are. Especially the internal ones within the band.
That's what I mean. Like the internal ones it's so like, you have this mindset that you're going to like take over the world.
Yep.
Like come on, are you in this army? we got to do this. And then just the teeniest things turn into like such gigantic fights.
Oh yeah.
Driving styles. I remember we got mad at Wayne, our bass player, for passing an exit. Like it's a mistake. There's no reason to get mad at a person for missing an exit. Whatever. We just get on to the next one. But that's the kind of thing that was like a devastating part of the day, that Wayne missed an exit. So what?
Yeah, I got left at a gas station once for like 4 hours.
That's what I mean.
They thought I was asleep in the back of the van where like nobody could see me. I'd been driving all night, and then I got out to use the bathroom and came back out to the gas pump, and they just left. They thought I'd climbed underneath to go to sleep. And we didn't have cell phones or anything. It was all, one guy in the band had a pager. And so I was trying to like page him.
You must have been so mad.
I was fine. They eventually got me.
Those were, we were touring, early 90s to like 1996 or something.
Yeah.
And we ended up on a few bills with ska bands or I can't even remember, or I also ended up at different ska shows and stuff. You might have missed Fishbone, right? Like we didn't play with Fishbone, but like that was another band that we really got into.
Oh yeah, I saw Fishbone. I actually got into Fishbone before I was aware of ska and before I understood that some of their songs were ska.
Yeah, they held the torch for a while, I would say.
Yeah,
like before all the 90s bands, I feel like Fishbone was kind of like, singularly hanging on to playing ska.
And then they did that Lollapalooza run, and I just remember kids at my high school just like asking them like, how was Lollapalooza? And they're like, there's this band Fishbone, the lead singer is just naked and he's just screaming fuck racism.
They are great. They still play and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just, not that you asked me how I feel about 90s ska, but I was always so happy about it. Like that was like a real feeling of like, oh, I'm so glad that this tradition is keeping on going. And that I remember like seeing No Doubt on David Letterman and thinking, oh, that is what I want, bands to be like on David Letterman, that they're playing.
So we interviewed John Bunkley from Gangster Fun.
Oh yeah.
And he said that you guys played together, Trenchmouth and Gangster Fun.
Yep. In Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yeah. I think they're Detroit, but yeah.
But I think we played with them in Ann Arbor. I think that was the first time imagine this turns into a debate.
Let me pull out my notes.
That's not what I said, but I know. But I saw him in Ann Arbor. Is he still in Detroit?
Yeah, he said that you used to crash at his house too. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, they were. Man, they were just like it's almost like one of our earliest sort of band friends. like the concept of someone from out of town, because we were in Chicago, so it was like one of the first sort of like, whoa, we're not in Illinois. And yeah, they were great. I really love Gangster Fun. Anyway, I interrupted you.
I was just going to ask if what you thought of Gangster Fun.
They made us feel, venturing out from out of town is like, it's like you're like exploring and feeling out what the rest of the country is like. So it's like not scary, but it's a little bit like, geez, what's out there?
Mhm.
And Gangster Fun made us feel like, oh, there's great stuff out there. There's, there are bands trying to do the same kind of thing. So I'm glad we got to play with them.
How extensively did Trenchmouth tour?
A lot.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we toured so much. It was like an obsession.
Mhm.
So I just wanted those tours to be longer and longer. It's really weird because all it was about was just like, let's get out there. Let's see where we can go. How far can we go?
Sure.
And we played all over the country and Canada. And yeah, we would just make it our business to like, get our van together and merch and just to try to get on as many shows as we could. And even though it was hard, I really loved it.
So it was like the only thing you cared about at that point?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was like it. It was the main thing. I lived for it. They lived for it. And even when it was terrible, we had each other, we would laugh, or we'd go to, even when we were in places that seemed, desolate and weird, it was still awesome. And now, I think a little bit more like, when else would I have had the opportunity to visit all these towns? And I do feel like in the 90s, I really got to know this country.
Mhm.
And what a great thing.
Yeah, it's the best way to travel.
I think so too.
What's the longest tour that Trenchmouth did?
I don't think we would ever go more than like a month,
Okay.
like to us, it seemed like a long time, but then, we'd go out again for another week or another couple weeks or something. We all had jobs. So there was like
Yeah.
that to deal with. Cause we made enough to stay on the road, but
Mhm.
then we'd have to come back and work our jobs to pay our rent. And
Yeah.
then we'd go out again, and, a band like, I don't know, Jawbox or Nation of Ulysses would invite us to go play a couple weeks and we'd go do that. And yeah, God, I loved it though. It was just such crazy, uh, like the need to go and play somewhere. It just did not matter what the
Mhm.
venue was, or anything. We're just like, sounds great. We'll do it. It's $75. Okay.
What's the weirdest venue you played?
Uh, we played in Berlin, in what used to be East Berlin. Even then, it was like already West Berlin, West Germany.
Yeah.
Not West Germany. It was Western. What do I call that? The wall came down, but it was like East Berlin, but not East Berlin anymore. We played at a squat.
Mhm.
The whole building they took over, and it was lit and heated by kerosene.
Oh,
So
wow.
torches. Like there were torches on the wall, and so everything smelled like kerosene, and that felt weird. That felt weird that it was like camping, but in the middle of a city.
Yeah, it's like apocalyptic.
Yeah. So I would say that was pretty weird.
Did you guys sleep in the squat too?
I think we slept in a different squat.
Okay.
Something horrible. Like, and by the way, no, I mean it. It was horrible because because it's one thing to like sleep at, a band's house or whatever,
Yeah.
but squats, I think there's like a toilet situation that isn't as
Oh, yeah.
oh, this is fine. It was like, I remember thinking this is not fine.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it was cold, but like I think the bathroom part wasn't fun. And just as you were asking me this, because I'm trying to like clear my head and not just, remember all the things I usually remember.
Mhm.
But somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico, I remember like we would sometimes play, or Amarillo, Texas, El Paso. we would play like people's backyards.
Mm-hmm.
So there were some backyard shows that were really great. But by weird, I mean, I'm like, I think it was somebody's house, but it felt like a real gig. Like
Yeah.
real meaning like there were a lot of people and there was like a sound system.
Yeah.
So that was weird in a good way of like, oh, that's totally enjoyable.
One of the times that I slept in a squat, I woke up in the morning. We went in there and it was pitch black when we went in to go to lay down. And we'd also been told, oh, don't worry about bringing sleeping bags or anything because, we got you covered. And so there was like just stuff all over the floor. And so I just like pulled a blanket over myself and like went to sleep.
Where was it?
It was somewhere in Europe. I can't even remember now.
See, it's Europe, huh?
It was France, I think. And then I woke up in the morning and the whole room was wallpapered with pages from the Bible. And the whole room was just full of trash. And the blanket I was sleeping under was like covered in it was like crusted with like blood.
Oh, jeez.
And we all got like super bad lung infections and were like throwing up afterwards. It's great.
It's so weird that you described it as dark because I remember that was the problem, I think.
There's no lights.
I think there was no lights and we had to accept it. Or like, okay, it's dark, but in the morning it'll be fine. And I've really blocked a lot of it out, but it was really like same kind of thing, like in the dark, and everything smelled like kerosene.
Yeah.
But we didn't get to. I don't think we stayed in any squats in the States.
Yeah, there's less of that here. Only in like New York, and that's it.
Right. Like I think a lot of bands go through this, or are like this, or maybe I'm wrong, but we're like suburban guys. So when we played in either DC or Long Island or New York, we would just go to my parents' house or Damon's parents' house or whatever.
Yeah.
We always had that sort of fallback to take a proper shower. I remember we played in New Orleans once, and the place we stayed at was just like too hot. Somebody's house. Maybe it was the guy from Blue Meanies. But it was too hot, so we're like, I gotta go sleep in the van. And it was it was scary sleeping in the van because there were so many drunks. You could hear them, and someone woke us up like pounding on the side of the van. Me and Damon, just a lunatic, pounding on the side of the van.
Yeah, we stayed in Christiania in Denmark, and slept on like park benches. And some drunk guy just wandered into like our little campsite that we'd set up, and just sat down on one of the benches and just was like hollering. And I just remember sitting up and looking at him for a second. I just laid back down and went to sleep.
Why did you stay on park benches though?
There was nowhere else to. It was like that was what was behind the stage, and we're just like, well, this is where we're sleeping tonight. God. And just like put out our sleeping bags and slept.
Wow.
I know I did that. I didn't tours extensively as both you guys, but I did a few tours with my band, and one time I don't know why, we're just like, let's just stay at this park. And we just stayed at the park, and then we played the show, and we told the people where we stayed. They're like, "Wow, that's a really dangerous park." And we're like, "Oh, okay."
I mean, almost any park.
Yeah,
right. You kind of just don't want to fall asleep.
I guess it's the mind of the 19-year-old. We're just like, all right, let's sleep at a park.
I don't know though. Like the first time I was going to go play Fest, like a couple of years ago, like I was like, I wanted to save money, and I was like, maybe I'll just sleep in the park. And our drummer was like, please don't sleep in the park.
I'm on your drummer side.
Yeah, me too. Now, like the last tour we did, we stayed in like actual hotels, and I was like, oh, this is so cush.
That's the way to go.
Yeah,
you got to treat yourself a little good, a little well.
Yeah, you got to give yourself some creature comforts once you're not in your like teens and 20s.
And what's your instrument that you play?
Right now, I'm just the vocalist in my band, but I play guitar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I get to just run around and scream. It's fun.
Yeah. And what are the crowds like?
They're great. Crowds have been awesome lately. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just the scene that I'm a part of, because I still see some like pretty gnarly punk shows happening in the Bay Area. Yeah. And like weirdo outsider spaces. But our shows have been great. I mean, the Gilman scene seems so much more chill than it was in the 90s. Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I remember going to shows in the 90s and feeling like, okay, a fight's gonna break out like any second.
Yeah.
And I don't have that vibe anymore. Like I brought my kids to the show I went to last night, and they're like 9 and 11.
And are they like enjoying the? Do they enjoy it, or are they like, what is?
Yeah, they're having. I mean, my 11-year-old's more into like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, but my 9-year-old's all in on punk and ska.
Oh, he brought his son on stage like a few months ago.
Yeah, we do like a hardcore punk song, and he was like, "Dad, I want to do it with you."
Oh,
so he
that's
got
so
up on
great.
stage and had the mic and was screaming.
That's
And
so
the
cool.
the big thing is that he gets to say fuck.
Yeah, that was the thing too. I was like, "Do you want to swear on stage right now?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Go ahead."
That's a kid's dream,
dude. It was amazing.
God, remember like when you were a kid and you discover swearing with your friends?
Oh, and I was so scared because I was afraid I was going to slip in front of my parents.
It was like, it's like really discovering. It's like so powerful. Like you discover this word and you just laugh with your friends at the existence of the word, just saying it.
I'm still afraid to swear in front of my parents, but my little brother, who's 10 years younger than me, ever since he was a little kid, he's just been just to my parents constantly swearing.
Wow. Really?
And they're just like,
I don't like it.
Whatever. I don't like it either.
It feels weird in front of my parents.
Okay. I got it. Let's see. Do you remember playing? This is back to Trenchmouth. Do you remember playing at the Vic opening for Skank and Pickle?
Yep.
All right. What do you remember about the show?
I remember Skank and Pickle were huge. Like I remember, them on stage, and I just remember the crowd. Like it's because that's a pretty big place. I remember, just my memory of it is that they were huge, and it was fun. They were great. They were really energetic. I remember their merch, and yeah, God, they were fun, and the crowd was going nuts. They were going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Who else played on it though? I feel like there were other ska bands on that bill.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Could have been.
We'll have to do some research.
Mike Park will clue us in for sure.
So Fireside Bowl. I heard that Trenchmouth played Fireside kind of early before it was sort of a regular venue. Do you remember playing Fireside? Like I want to say like 93 maybe?
Well, yes, but it was always a music venue. Like we never played without like a little stage and a PA there. I remember Brian was doing shows.
Yeah, I heard you played pre-Brian, like where it was because Brian was doing stuff I think in 94 on. But maybe my information's wrong. That's just what I heard.
I think he was also he used to do shows out in the suburbs. I think that's how we got to know him. But wow, I don't remember. But all I remember is that it was definitely like there was stuff going on. Maybe not. It wasn't as big or it wasn't as much of a thing, but it wasn't a case of let's set up equipment while people are bowling or anything like that.
No, yeah, no.
But boy, those were great, fun shows.
Man, what a great venue!
The best, right?
So good. So many good shows there. And like
crazy.
Then you see, if you go on YouTube and just watch videos of those shows, they're insane.
Oh, I was not aware.
Oh yeah. Yeah. On YouTube, if you just type in Fireside, it'll pull up like a ton of videos.
Oh, I don't remember anyone shooting. That's so funny.
Yeah, there's just like rando video of these shows. Like there's a really good like early AFI one on there.
What?
Yeah. Good stuff.
Wow.
When I played, I used to have like gross white boy dreadlocks. And I was trimming them outside of the Fireside once. And I took like a specifically like really gnarly chunk and I duct taped it up above like where the drummer's head would be on the back of the wall of the Fireside. And so like I would look for it in pictures of other bands.
You just left it.
So I heard a rumor. This is a Fireside rumor. See if you have any intel on this.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been told is that the first show at Fireside was Cap'n Jazz in 1992.
You know, I am gonna just without any research or without even thinking about it, that feels true.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Like just from like the bands who were playing around then and like where they were playing and stuff, that something about that rings true. So I'm going to vote. I'm just, not coming from fact, but coming from
voting.
In my vote is, I bet that's correct. But I will say, to back up my vote, I was around and, in friends with, all those bands, and there was just certain venues where things were happening, and that makes sense to me.
Do you remember the bartender at Fireside?
I don't.
His name is Hammer.
Hammer. No offense to Hammer, if you're out there, Hammer. I was just loading in my stuff and loading out, and nervous about playing the show. So,
yeah. What was you mentioned the Blue Meanies before? Did you ever play with Blue Meanies?
Yeah, a couple times. I think maybe in some of those suburban Chicago shows.
Mm-hmm.
But someone else might be able to tell me, like, oh, no, it was this other thing in Chicago, but yeah, we played with them. I think a couple times. Yeah, they're really nice. I remember we stayed friendly with them, and I feel, did I read somewhere that they're doing more shows or something?
Yeah, they're doing a reunion show with kind of the version 1.0 of the band. So like the early version.
It's a one-off. Yeah, in July.
Wow, great. Where do they live?
They live all over, but they're doing a Chicago show because that's the home for the band. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting because the singer Billy, he did move to New Orleans for like a year or two. So, and that's you think maybe you did stay at his house.
Yes, and we stayed at his house, but I don't think we were playing with them. I think it was just that he came to the show.
Yeah, I think they were like sort of broken up when he was down in New Orleans.
Yeah,
for like a little period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, it was sweltering hot, but it was no disrespect to his place. New Orleans was just generally hot. It was just so sweltering, and I just could not get comfortable. It was just too hot.
What about Slapstick? Do you remember that band?
Oh, I remember. I do. I can't remember where we would have played with them though.
Because they were really big on you're talking about those suburban shows.
Yeah.
In Elgin and whatnot.
That's
that Brian
it.
Was putting on. Yeah.
Elgin, yes.
They were kind of like the star of that suburban sort of scene pre-Fireside, yeah.
I'm guessing we must have played with them at some point. Mm-hmm. And apologies for not, sometimes a lot of those gigs were like many bands were on the bill.
Yo, for sure.
And we'd rush out and set up and play, and it's pretty chaotic.
How many bands is the right amount of bands for a show?
The answer changes as we get older.
It does.
So like now, and this happens more frequently. Like sometimes I'll go to a show and it's just the one band, and we're all grateful. We're like, oh, that's all. That said, though, I mean, I've had some great experiences seeing multiple bands. I kind of feel like 2 is ideal. 3 pushes it a little bit. I've seen some good 3-band bills. So what do you think?
Three's like the sweet spot. I feel like 4 is really pushing it, and those bands all better be good, and their changeovers better be quick. Yeah. Anything above that is punishing. Like all the other thing too is bands just need to get more used to just sharing backline. Like just use the same kit. Come on.
Couldn't agree more. And that should have been happening years ago.
Oh, 100%. How dumb is it when 6 hardcore bands are on a show and they all put 6 8-10 cabinets and stack them on the stage
and the drum kit? I'm like,
and it's the same kit. Everybody's got the same kit.
That's the same kit. Come on. How about kick drum, rack tom, floor tom, and you guys can switch out everything else so you have your personality. I'm like,
everybody's got their breakable.
Yes, you guys they're all tuned kind of the same way. Tune it up if you need to, but that takes up so much time. And 4 bands is like, now what are you doing? There is an audience here, and it kind of also, I think also deadens your hearing. Like by the 3rd band, you're sort of, I don't know, it's like less of a surprise to hear instruments.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went to a show at Gilman just on a whim the other night, and there were 4 bands. Yeah, and the 4th band was just not good.
Yeah,
and I had gone I was like, I'm gonna be supportive and go kind of stand near the stage, and I turned around and the venue was empty. I was the only person watching them, and I was like, I'm now stuck watching this whole band. I look like an asshole.
Oh yeah, it's like hurtful to leave.
And here's the thing, Fred. These guys were all like dudes in their like 50s. And literally, I felt like they were doing your skit from SNL, the one where you guys are playing at the wedding.
Yeah.
Like every one of their songs sounded like Fist Fight in the Parking Lot.
And this is the band he said there was nobody
They
there.
were playing to no one.
Yeah.
And they were just like, this next song's about how the cops are dumb.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh shit, come on, man.
And again, I don't want to say anything insulting to those bands. Great. I'm glad you're playing. I just feel like if you're in your, I don't want to put them down. I'll just say, this is just my opinion as far as like playing. When you're in your 20s, you're just like, I got to get out there and, keep playing, even if there's nobody there.
Yeah.
But me being in my 50s, I'm like, well, if there's nobody there, shorten the set.
Yeah, for sure.
For
Leave
everybody. Just for everybody. It's okay. You're a great band, but just cut 5 songs from the set. Everyone's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Is all I'm saying.
That's the right take right there, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious about your drumming influences. So was your first band the KGB and the...
Yes, like a hardcore. Not like, it was a hardcore band.
Yeah.
And we were a trio, and I think back then some of the other band members wanted me to have timbales. I probably didn't know where to find them or anything, but I remember they liked timbales because of bands like Pig Bag and I think Liquid Liquid and Bow Wow Wow. So Bow Wow Wow was like the first like, wow, what's this drummer doing? Because he had timbales instead of rack toms, and I kind of leaned into that. And then when I finally found some timbales, I always kept them on my kit. I just love the sound of them. So that followed through with Trenchmouth and stuff, where I would have like one timbale in front of me as opposed to a rack tom.
Oh, wow. Not even just off to the side of the snare.
No, I liked it as like a main thing.
Okay.
So I always liked Alan Myers from Devo, Dave Barbarossa from Bow Wow Wow, Topper Headon from The Clash. Those are like, and Clem Burke my favorite drummer is Clem Burke from Blondie.
Mm-hmm.
He's just, will always be my favorite. So I was really inspired and influenced by him. And then, a million other drummers, but those were like the first. But then as we kept going, or as I kept going in my life, George Hurley, and there's just a million great drummers.
Yeah. Trenchmouth is a very eclectic band. Like we talked about this before, there's definitely some dub and reggae and some ska elements in the music.
Mm-hmm.
What was the influence pool within the band? Did you guys all listen to like a ton of music? Was there certain stuff that you shared that was sort of the nucleus of what you were going for?
Oh yeah. That's like all we talked about. That our whole lives are talking about music, listening, we'd listen to music together in the van. This is like right when Fugazi broke. So really they were like the ultimate. We wanted to be like Fugazi. And then all the other Discord bands we kind of were friends with. Damon is originally from DC. So somewhere in there, we really just wanted to be like them. Or, The Clash or Gang of Four, the Specials, and all the dub influences. That was definitely Wayne and Damon. Meaning I knew nothing about it. I had no idea what it was. But Damon would make these mixtapes of like Augustus Pablo and Lee Scratch Perry, and I had never heard it. And driving, throughout all over the Midwest or whatever, when it's dark out and listening to that music, it made the rides so much nicer, and my mind would just drift listening to this music. So that's where that came from.
Interesting, yeah.
Who else? We wanted to be like the X and Dog-Faced Hermans, this Dutch band, and that's kind of like where No Means No, I remember we wanted to be like. But somewhere in there, and some Latin music. I used to really like Tito Puente. I remember also always liking Sheila E.
Yeah.
She's a great drummer. Yeah.
She's fantastic, and
Yeah.
also like really unlike anybody. Because her like standing up and playing the timbales is a very rare thing, like a rare kind of performer. So yeah, and then as time went, obviously like Sleater Kinney and just yeah, like Tortoise. I remember Tortoise was a big influence for us. They were, we were around at the same time, but that was like they opened our, our minds. Oh, I remember we used to love Stereolab. Oh my
Mhm.
God, we used to love Stereolab.
I saw Tortoise at Santa Cruz. After that double record, the one that was really blowing up, came out.
Yeah.
And I had like listened to it for a while, so I was pretty familiar with their music, but I had no idea what they looked like or anything about them visually.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like I was a little like the way they set up on stage. It was like they overtook the stage. It wasn't like a band. It was like, or this is how I remember it anyways. It was like here's a whole bunch of instruments and a whole bunch of guys, and we're just gonna like figure out
Yeah.
what to do with all this stuff and make music. And it was like
Yeah.
such a weird experience, but it was awesome.
To me, they really seemed very Chicago too. Like I think there's like a tradition of musician in Chicago that's, I don't know how to describe it, but Tortoise really matched it. They seemed
Mhm.
like very much like people who had lofts and recording equipment in their lofts,
Yeah.
as opposed to a place like New York where you can't really afford to have that much space.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're great.
It's interesting that you brought up Devo as a drumming influence because I love Devo and I really love their first the first few records before they went electronic. I mean, I like the electronic stuff too, but in terms of the rhythm section,
Yeah.
really interesting, and it's very like kind of robotic in this really cool way.
Yeah.
Like Duty Now for the Future. I could just listen to that record and listen to what the instruments are doing. And it's so cool. Like you don't really hear people mention that as a drumming influence very often, but it's really amazing.
I mean, Duty Now for the Future, I think is just one of the great drumming albums of all time. The way
Mhm.
they're recorded and like the way I kind of learned from listening to Devo just as one of the first, records that I had. And none of it is like fills. Like, oh, I'm jamming along to a song. What a crazy fill. Oh, I went, he went, now he's going nuts in this one song. It's all patterns. They're all drum patterns that are super busy, super tom heavy, and they're part of the beat. So it's almost like I expected the rest of drumming to go on that way, forever. Like
Mhm.
that's the way it was going to be. But those patterns are really, I like that they're repetitive and busy.
Yeah, yeah. Drumming is an instrument, and it can add to the melodic experience if it's approached that way.
Yeah, and he approached it for sure.
And like you mentioned Sleater Kinney, Janet Wise,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
her drumming, I saw her play at a festival in LA once and with Sleater Kinney, and like blew my mind. The way she approached the drums, and the way she
Yeah.
accented the music was just ah,
It has
so amazing.
some
Yeah.
similarities to Devo in that
Yeah, exactly.
she would do these beats where the toms were sort of part of the beat.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean just like riding on the floor tom. I mean like, off beats on the rack tom and stuff, that kind of thing that just kind of is also repetitive that I really love. Yeah, Janet's just great.
I interviewed her once for like a newspaper article, and I would say it's probably probably the most nervous I've ever been for an interview, just
Uh-huh.
because I was such a fan.
Yeah.
And I was like, did you like Quasi too?
Yeah, oh yeah. Love
That
Quasi.
that album, Birds, featuring birds,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fantastic.
was like one of my favorite records. And I just like after
Beautiful.
the interview, I was like, I got to tell you how much I love featuring birds. And I'm like, why? In my
Yeah.
mind, I'm like, why am I doing this right now? And
And
she's like, oh, it's very nice of you.
yeah, no, it's great. And yeah, and they're great singers too. And yeah, the Quasi are great.
Here's another one. One time online, someone was like, "Does Fred Armisen like ska?" And then like this other person was like, "Oh yeah, I talked to him once. He said he likes Let's Go Bowling."
Oh yeah, but I think I don't think we ever played with Let's Go Bowling. But I feel like I saw them somewhere. I can't remember when. But I've seen Let's Go Bowling. I feel like at some like maybe a festival or something. But I feel like I've ended up watching a lot of ska bands like at a festival.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that sort of pop up. But yeah, I mean, I would say like a huge fan of ska. And then the more I learn about it, because I learned about it late, but whenever I hear about like the '60s version of ska, that's even more exciting to hear like where it all came from and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
You
You ever get one of those Trojan Records box sets?
Yeah, I got a bunch of those. And there's I got some that were like, I got some box sets that were 10-inch records that were really cool. But there's some other labels that were putting out stuff. I think like a British label was putting out a bunch of like, I'm kind of like a sucker for those compilations just because I feel like I missed out so much. So like I'll just buy, as soon as I see that it's like whatever, like Jamaican music or even if it's like a British ska, I just any of it I'll take. I love it.
I read this interview with it was with Wayne about Trenchmouth. This was, I think, in the 2000s. So it was after the band had already, broken up. And he said he felt like one of the problems the band faced was that even though the band basically came from punk, that didn't feel like punks really appreciated it. What was your take on that?
I don't know. It's hard to like think about like appreciation and stuff. Like I just feel like we had such a great time, you know? And weirdly, I can, whenever if I think of something in my life that like, wasn't as I imagined, I can only blame myself. So, I feel like maybe, drumming wise, I was so out to prove that I was fast.
Yeah.
A fast, busy drummer that, I don't know. When I look back, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have like slowed down a little, laid down a little more of a groove. But who knows? I mean,
But I feel like listening to those Trenchmouth recordings, like I feel like the rest of the band is kind of on that same wavelength too. Like everybody's going hard. Nobody's like really trying to like service the song. Everybody's trying to like service their like that feeling of it needs to be frenetic.
Yeah, I mean, it could be us being in our 20s or something.
Totally.
And yeah, who knows? I mean, I feel like we played some really busy shows. There were people there, and they were very appreciative and loving, and buying merch and writing fan letters and stuff. So, I can't, for some reason, I can't really look back and think. I just remember like how kind people were, like we'd play like Minneapolis, and God, people were just so nice and into it and dancing around. We used to like, for some reason, we would play these shows in Sioux City, Iowa, and it was like this hot spot for like Trenchmouth. I don't know what it was, but like we'd show up there, and it really like the crowds were great always. We played some really fun shows. But I don't know, I loved it. Even though like I kept playing so fast and so busy, at least I got to drum a lot. Yeah. So when I look back at my 20s, I do appreciate the fact that I played so much drums. I'm like, man, I really, got into those, those piccolo snare drums. I really, and timbales and stuff. Like, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I drummed so much.
Those piccolo snare drums really were something, though.
They really were.
cut right through everything else.
They really, really did. Like, why have cymbals?
Yeah, right. Just have a bunch of differently tuned piccolos.
Yeah, it's like so metallic sounding, but it did cut through, and yeah, God, it was fun, and I love playing with Wayne. I mean, he's just such a great bass player, and I saw him recently. I saw his uh he has a new band, and that was really fun. I saw Damon recently. I was in Chicago for this band called White Mystery celebrated their 15th anniversary, and I got to hang out with Damon and Wayne. And you don't know Azita, do you? Azita Yousefi. She's an artist. She's on Drag City, and got to see her. I don't know. Chicago is just such a great place for music.
Yeah, definitely.
And venues and stuff. But I don't know. I'll always feel like I got to see a lot of the world and the country. Not a lot of the world, but a lot of this country. And I don't know. Fans were really nice, and once in a while I'll bump into someone who will say something, who will be like, I was at this show or that show, and I've got good memories of it, and then I've got the ones I don't enjoy is like of how the drum cases I had were hard shell,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the dumbest thing. It was the dumbest idea that because hard shell is for like if you have to stack other equipment on top of it.
Yeah.
And we didn't have enough equipment. It was just I was emulating or imitating, rock stars. I was like, well, they all have big, cases with their names spray painted on it. And now looking back, I wish I had just gig bags for them.
Sure. Yeah, especially if you're not stacking stuff on them.
Well, once I started touring it, my drum set went from a normal drum set to it's like a bass drum, tom, no rack toms, a hi-hat, and then a ride cymbal that I would also use as a crash cymbal.
That's all you need.
That's all.
Yeah. And then towards the end, weren't you also just stacking them all inside the bass drum?
Yep. Yeah. No head on the
Aaron
bass drum.
hates carrying gear.
It's the worst. And it's kind of unnecessary. Like multiple cymbals. I don't know. We didn't need them.
Yeah.
I did, like, what was that about? Like, I mean, eventually, like you said, I whittled it down to just ride and crash, but come on, China cymbal, this and that. It's not worth.
You need a China cymbal and a splash, of course, when you're playing a Fireside Bowl.
Yeah.
Counting off a breakdown though on a crash cymbal is great though. Or no, I mean on a China. Just like that, like before a breakdown, just that like 4 count just on the China.
Oh yeah.
And then here comes the halftime break.
Yeah.
I saw you play at the New Parish, and you were doing a bit, and I think one of the bits was because you had the drums there, and I think you did a bit about how all the ska songs start with the same fill.
Oh, did I?
I think you did. You definitely did a bunch of ska jokes, and I was like there for it. It was also right before everything shut down again, and we were all wearing masks, and you got on stage and asked if it was okay to take off your mask.
Wow.
You were like, I think, am I wrong? But is everything about to shut down again? And I was about to go on tour, and I was like, fuck, you're right. And the tour got postponed.
This was in San Francisco, right?
No, this was New Parish in Oakland, and you were talking about the Moxie.
That was one of the last. That was the last show before the pandemic.
Yeah,
because that was with Def Rain.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was pretty intense.
So sorry, I threw a lot at you at once. But do you remember any of those ska bits that you did?
No, but I'm remembering it. Yes, that was. There's one reggae thing that I used to do where I would talk about bands who had like one reggae song, and so they would like reggae it up too much. Like with all kinds of offbeats and little syncopated things where I'm like, yeah, we get it. It's reggae.
Mm-hmm. Could do the slow down triplet.
I love hearing you do drum speak, by the way. Dukem flackum.
I got some questions about Spike, your bike messenger character that sold bootleg Bart Ska-mpson shirts.
Yeah.
Okay, so think most people have probably seen that skit. Was there the way Spike looked, his style, and then selling bootleg ska shirts? What was the thought process there?
I don't think he's like a pure ska guy.
Okay.
I think he's into ska, but like not, he's not, because he doesn't dress like a ska guy.
Yeah. He's got the circle earring things. He's got sort of the beatnik goatee.
Right. So he's like less of that. He's more like whatever like general 90s alternative was.
Mm-hmm.
Like he equally would have been, good with anyone at Lollapalooza or the side stage of Lollapalooza. Perfectly at home there. But that would also include like Fishbone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's like that guy. And Bart Ska-mpson, that just came up in the writer's room. We were trying to think of something that would be physical, that, so that Bart looks like he's doing like a dance or something. And that's the only thing that kind of could fit. Because there's no such thing as like a Bart Grunge-son or something.
Yeah.
So ska like seemed like, at least it's, a visual physical thing.
Yeah. So you had Matt Groening come on and file a lawsuit or whatever, as that was part of the skit. This was in 2015.
Yeah.
2016, Simpsons had Mighty Mighty Bosstones cameo on the show.
Nice.
So I'm just wondering if the roots of that decision happened when he came on your show. What's your vote?
I think my vote would be no, because because Mighty Mighty Bosstones were already kind of big, or have been big for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the Simpsons tradition of like bands being on the show has gone back a long way, and I just feel like that made sense for that whatever episode that was.
Okay.
So believe me, I would if I could say yes, I would do it, proudly. But my for this one, my gut is like, no, that was like probably either in the works or like, it just that seems more coincidental.
Yeah. To be fair, it was a Boston episode, and I mean, of course, you're going to have Mighty Mighty Bosstones
Right.
for a Boston. Yeah.
And I also don't know that like Matt Groening is as involved with like who the guests are going to be. I'm sure he's part of it, but like that's like a whole, there's a group of writers, and I'm sure the Boston part makes more sense. That I can see.
So a couple years after that skit, IFC, this is, I think, a promotion for Documentary Now. They posted this to social media, this Spike sound of ska. Ska was this world until it was over.
Uh-huh. What was it? Was it Spike doing his version of ska, like what it sounds like?
Let me like, I think I have it on my desktop. It's just like him like making a face. Let me see. I got it right here. Yeah, he's like, like, the Spike face. So it's made to look like this dramatic documentary.
Wow.
So were you not part of that?
They just take a picture and did it up.
Yeah, that's the marketing department or whatever.
All right. Well,
which is fine, fine with me. They that's stuff that they have to do to kind of like keep it, putting it like in a different framing or something.
Yeah, you just got to trust them to do what's going to be best for it.
Yeah, like I remember me and Carrie, there is like we'd go through like emails where we had to approve stuff, but sometimes that would go by so quickly. We would just catch whatever didn't work.
Yeah.
So we'd go like, no, or this is fine. But if something popped out, like, no, not that.
Okay, let's talk about your Saturday Night Live skit, the Pippa Visits the Queen.
Oh, yeah.
I think it came after the Elton John one.
Yes.
Where you and Bill Hader play a punk song.
Yeah.
And then the second one, you guys play a ska song. And Katy Perry's part of that scene.
Yeah. Same thing. Same like, tribute. If the Elton John one, I was like, oh, there's got to be a way to get Elton John to sing a punk song. And he did it great. But I think he's a fan anyway of punk, as I was talking to him, talking about different bands and stuff. And I think he's also, I think he's played on an OMD song early on.
Mm.
Anyway, so yeah, so for that next time, I was just thinking, what else could we do that would be like a fun, you know, the genre that's very British.
Yeah, you did it. That was the interesting thing about it, because it was a very British version of ska.
Yeah, that's where we were going with it.
And Katy Perry, she throws in a few pick it ups.
Yeah,
she seems like she knows how to do a little skanking. So
yeah. I'm always surprised, or I shouldn't be, about how familiar everybody is with ska and with punk. It's like people, yeah, they really, there doesn't seem to be any explaining that we've ever had to do.
Nardwuar did an interview with her, and he found out. He brought up that her first show she ever went to as a teenager was the Mad Caddies at a Chain Reaction. So she does have ska roots.
How did he know?
Who knows how Nardwuar finds out
Yeah.
he finds out. She was surprised that he knew. Let's just say
I'm
that.
surprised. I'm like, wow, that's not a show she played. That's when she was at.
Yeah, it's like a kid, like the first time she went to see a show.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Good research, Nardwuar.
Good research. When we first talked about doing this interview,
yeah,
you said that you disagree with this idea that ska's maligned, and you thought it'd make for an interesting discussion.
Yeah, but then, like, when I first heard about it, you're like, in defense of ska. I was like, what, in defense? It's I think a respected and legit and a historic genre. But then I listened to the podcast. I was listening to it, and it's not what it was about at all. So I misconstrued what it was about. So the title of it, I was like, oh, are we going to go on and talk about defending ska? And I was like, oh, no, there's just interviews with people and their experience with ska. So its existence is a sort of, it's just about celebrating ska. So I mistook it.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Wait, well, curiously though, what episode did you listen to?
I listened to a couple. It was funny because as I was listening, it was an interview, and I was like, oh, it's just an interview. And then it never got to like some discussion of like, we have to defend it. It was like, and then I was, trying to think like, well, let's get to it. And then I was like, oh no, this is it. So then great.
I think because what you said in the initial email was you were saying how kind of popular it was. And I think like ska was actually pretty well respected in the 90s when it was popular.
Yeah.
I think there's been a period after the 90s where it stopped being popular, and then people sort of turned it into this like thing where like a parody of it, where they don't really understand the culture of it, the subculture of it, kind of act like, it's dead, it's gone. Like there's a whole thing that happened in the 2000s, and I think it's sort of changing again in more recent years. But yeah, that was the idea of defending ska came from that, and I wrote a book about it and stuff, and the podcast came from the book. So we don't like defend ska per se every episode, but yeah.
Oh, I see.
But just saying that it can sit alongside punk and hardcore, like it's not like some weird thing that only happened for like a few months in the 90s.
No, it's I even think of it's not my crazy opinion, but I think Obladia Oblada is written as a ska song.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think based on something Paul McCartney was listening to or someone he knew. Not that I'm just, by the way, I'm not saying that they invented ska. I'm just saying that like it was reflected in pop music.
Yes.
Is what I meant.
What I've read is that the Desmond mentioned in the song, that was a reference to Desmond Decker.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't know that.
So I think it was on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That makes it even more so.
Yeah. I mean, ska and reggae and rocksteady was so popular in England in the 60s. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, I learned that later. I had no idea. But I don't know. I like learning that, later. That's fine by me. That, that I wasn't like versed in like the history of ska and reggae and, until later is, I'm still learning about ska. So in some ways.
Sure. We're learning right now.
So as you know, as we began this whole thing anyway, yeah, I was already on board. But by the way, even if it was a case of like where it was going to be a debate, I was happy to come on.
Sure.
You know, I wasn't like, I just, you know, it all seemed cool anyway. I just like talking about ska, so that was fine by me.
Maybe we should do a debate then, a debate show with you.
We should do a debate of who likes ska the most.
Okay.
Oh, it's Aaron.
Yeah, probably.
We'll see.
Don't go anywhere. If you want to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to our Patreon. Thank you for listening to In Defense of Ska. Please rate and review this podcast and tell a friend. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at In Defense of Ska. Pick up Aaron's book, In Defense of Ska, at your local bookstore or online. This podcast is edited by Chris Reeves of Ska Punk International. This is your co-host, Adam Davis of Omnigon, leaving you by saying ska now more than ever.
What's your favorite drum onomatopoeia?
I haven't ranked them yet.
What about bucket of fish?
What's the taco burrito? Is that one? Taco.
No, you're
burrito.
just thinking of that Get Hustle song.
That's aren't all their songs onomatopoeias?
I don't know. Hey, how cool is it that we got to talk to Fred Armisen?
The coolest.
I'm still pretty stoked about this. I'd been wanting to talk to this guy for a long time, and listen up. So we had some technical difficulties during this. Fred was so super cool about it. And then when we decided to go behind the curtain, we're like, Fred, do you have some extra time that we can talk to you? He's like, yeah, I'm here for whatever you guys need.
Yeah.
And I was so blown away. Head over behind the curtain. We get real loose with Fred back there.
Yeah.
At one point we were trying to get him to do an impression of somebody and he declined. But you should go listen and hear it for yourself.
That person is a little bit of a little hint. They have a weird voice, and they're a singer for a ska punk band.
Yeah, if you can't get it from that, you're really going to need to pay to get over to behind the curtain over on the Patreon.
Just $5.
Can't believe we got to talk to Fred Armisen. I even emailed him afterwards. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, what'd you say?
I sent him a link to Link 80 playing at the Fireside Bowl on YouTube, and was like, hey, there's a whole bunch of videos if you follow this one of bands playing at Fireside Bowl.
And he was like, oh shit, I was at
he wrote me back and he was like, oh my God, I'm way going down this rabbit hole. So
all right,
that was really cool.
Great episode this week. Next week, also a great episode. We have Joe, guitarist for Dead Milkmen.
You're not going to miss it.
Yeah, we even talk about ska.
Can you believe it?